Welcome to Nonconventional. My name is Ela Crain, and today I have a very, very special guest with me. He's someone that made me think a lot about fear. I found him on YouTube around 10 years ago, and I was just shocked, mesmerized, just watching his videos one after another, just with an open mouth. And I realized that the way I was handling fear was so limited, and he really made me contemplate on fear and impermanence for many, many years to come. You will know him as a base jumper and a wingsuit pilot, but I call him in my mind as the master of impermanence and fear. Here is Jeb Corliss.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
So I have a very basic question to start with.
Yes.
How dangerous is this base jumping?
um,
I know it's dangerous, but how dangerous?
you know, I've done a lot of dangerous things in my life. My life is doing dangerous things. Ever since I was a little kid, I started catching rattlesnakes, and I used to like to jump off high things, and I started riding motorcycles and surfing big waves and climbing. I started diving with sharks when I was 16, and I did all of these things, and you kind of get into them thinking, wow, that's really dangerous. These are dangerous things, and I'm getting into something that's dangerous. But you start doing them, and you start realizing, you know what? With the right training, the right preparation, this can actually be done pretty safely. Like, this actually isn't as bad as people think it is. And as you get more experience, usually you get to a place where it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, this isn't that bad. Base jumping is the first thing that I got into thinking it was dangerous. And then after a decade of doing it, I began to realize that it was more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Not only was it as dangerous as I thought it was 1,000 times more dangerous than I could ever have even contemplated. I have watched so many people die and so many good friends die. And I have been so completely and utterly shattered myself. I've broken my back in 3 places, all of my ribs, left foot twice, right foot twice, both my knees, my fibula. I've cracked my skull. I've broken teeth. I've broken both my wrists, most of my fingers, all of my toes. It is just violent on a level that is impossible to comprehend. It's funny because I always tell people when they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I want to get into base jumping." I'm always like, you know what, man? Honestly, if you can find happiness in your life doing anything else, do anything else. Like, literally anything. If you can find happiness doing anything that is not this, you do that. But honestly, there's a certain group of human beings who are wired in a certain kind of way where they can't really seem to find happiness doing anything else, and that's how I'm wired. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately, I guess it all is how you look at it, right?
Right.
I needed something this extreme. I needed something that created very powerful and extreme experiences in order to work through things going on in my mind. I had psychological disorders, is really the only way I can describe it. There was something happening in my head where I just wasn't happy. I suffered from serious depression when I was younger, and I don't know, I wasn't designed for the world in which we live, and my brain just wasn't functioning properly. And I didn't know what to do about it. And I think a lot of teenagers, I'm not unique. I think a lot of teenagers, when you're going through puberty and reaching that stage of your life, you struggle. And I struggled hard. I don't know if it was harder than others, but I struggled a lot for myself. And, a lot of people need to find something to channel that energy, that kind of dark. For me, it was dark energy into something. And luckily for me, I found something so powerful and so extreme and so heavy, like base jumping, that it is what I used as, let's call it medication. It was what I used to survive myself, and I always put it like this. I had a fire burning in me, like this burning in my brain that was consuming me. And I used base jumping to set little fires in front of it, creating little fire breaks inside my own mind to kind of hold it back, to hold back this like raging inferno that was trying to completely destroy me. And luckily I found some base jumping was the only thing that was extreme enough and intense enough and powerful enough to kind of hold it at bay, you know. And it was, so it's, again, for some people, like, not, I mean, some people need this kind of thing in order to find purpose, find happiness, find center, and control the demons that are ripping away at them, you know. And that's what it was for me.
And when you say happiness, what exactly do you mean? Like, I wonder if it's the same happiness we're talking about. Like, how does base jumping make you happy? Is it really happy, or is it some kind of release and relief happy?
It's much bigger than that, and it takes a long time. And I don't think base jumping is what actually made me happy. Base jumping was a tool, right? It's not like the wrench makes a house, right? The wrench is a tool you use to build certain portions of the house. And I would say that base jumping was a tool I used in order to get to happiness. Like, I wasn't even trying to find happiness. That wasn't my goal, right? Like, when I started base jumping, you know, I was 16 when I saw it for the first time. And you have to remember, I mean, I'm 46 now, so I'm a completely different human being than I was at 16. At 16, I was a very unhappy, very dark, very, like, suicidal. I was a suicidal kid, you know, and I was suffering. Like, I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I didn't want to do things. I didn't care about the future. I didn't have passions or dreams or desires. I didn't want anything. I didn't care about anything. Nothing mattered to me. All I wanted to do was just cease existing. I didn't want to be here anymore, you know. And I know a lot of teenagers, like I said, go through that, you know, but for me, it was very powerful and it was very overwhelming. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have an outlet. You know, I was just going to kill myself. That's pretty much what I was going to do. Like, it was a guarantee. It was going to happen. So, you know, I saw base jumping for the first time in a documentary. And when I saw it, it was a very powerful moment for me, because all of a sudden I saw a person standing on a cliff, and I saw him stepping off that cliff, and I saw him starting to fly. And I had been told my entire life that that wasn't possible. And when I was a kid, I had dreamt about flying a lot. And when I saw this guy do that, I was like, you know, that's real. People can fly. I mean, literally, people can fly. And it was very powerful for me, because I realized instantly, it was like a bolt of lightning struck me. I knew that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. That's it. I was going to dedicate everything I had to that. And I saw it as a very kind of perfect scenario for me, because at that moment, with my mind the way it was, I couldn't fail at it. Either I jumped and I succeeded and did something that very few human beings on this planet were willing to do, or I died and I was released from my suffering on this planet. Either way, it was a win-win situation.
Yeah.
No matter what, I win. So, and you got to remember, though, this was the mind of a suicidal, unhappy child. You know, my brain was not functioning properly. So that's what I was thinking. But it created a very strange scenario for me, because all of a sudden I went from not wanting anything to wanting something, right? I wanted to become a base jumper now. It gave me a point off in the distance, off on the horizon, that I wanted to get to. And sometimes that's all you need to hang on, right? Because I was on the very edge of just ending it. And that gave me something in the future, a place that I wanted to get to. So even though it was kind of a dark place I wanted to get to, it was still a place. So every single time I would get really depressed and I would really contemplate killing myself, I wouldn't do it, because I'm like, no, I'm not going to waste it. If you're going to kill yourself anyways, base jump, like, get there. You must get there. And it gave me something to kind of hold on to in those really dark periods of my life. So in a very ironic, kind of strange way, base jumping saved my life, you know. and I always say it like this, you know, in my search for death, right? I was searching to die. I actually found my life. Like, I found a reason to live. And it's funny, because you can't just base jump. Base jumping takes a long time. You have to first get old enough to be able to start skydiving. You then have to do hundreds of skydives. You then have to find a mentor and learn to base jump. And this process took me over 5 years before I was finally able to do my first base jump. And what's really, I don't know if the irony is the right word, but I basically, by the time I was 21 and I was doing my first base jump, I didn't want to die anymore. I had become a super happy person. I enjoyed my life. I had purpose. Base jumping had given me a reason to live. And the process of getting there, I found the reason to breathe oxygen, the reason to eat food, the reason to drink, the reason to get up out of bed and do anything. It gave me all of that. And they just think that I don't have fear, which isn't true. I'm terrified. This stuff scares me to death. And I'm more scared now than I was when I started. It's a very frightening experience. And what I've become very good at is managing fear. I mean, that's what I do for a living. I manage fear. And I can see why people decide to use drugs, because they want to try to numb that out. I think death is the one thing that we really do understand, we really do know, and we really do not like. We really are upset about it.
And we don't want to know. I feel like we know a very kind of mild version of death. I was watching some videos about cremation. How does that happen? We know the outcome. You see yourself or you see a loved one in an urn, but what happens during the process? Or when we have the funerals, we see this person lying there peacefully with a makeup on. But when I found out that your eyelids might be stitched to one another, and to stop your brain from leaking out of your ears, there are kind of cotton pads stuck in your ears. And I found actually very scary videos on YouTube. They get removed, of course, after a few days. But you can find all sorts of decomposition videos on YouTube, including human decomposition. And I don't know why, don't ask me. I guess I have a few screws loose also.
Yeah.
I would watch them. I have this 2-hour meditation practice in the mornings. After that, I would watch an animal or a human decomposition video, and it will shake me for days, if not weeks. But I thought, this is what's going to happen to me. This is the truth. This is the reality. And it also shaped, after you, it shaped the way I kind of live my life. And then I heard of this practice. When you get out, you leave your home every morning, you look back before you close the door and say goodbye to everything and everyone in there. Literally, you're not coming back. And it is just so powerful. And it changed everything. It changed my relationship with my husband. It changed the way I make decisions. It changed the way I live my life. And I am so happy that I dug into that uglier version of death, where, you're taken after, you die in a morgue and people steal your money from your wallet kind of death, no one cares about you anymore.
You know what's interesting, though, is it's actually not that ugly. And it really just shows you how important the moments we have are. The conversation that we're having means something because it's limited. We only have a certain period of time that we get to communicate with one another, and then it's over, right? And it makes you appreciate. And I think that's base jumping for me. Again, I don't call it a sport. It's not a sport. Base jumping is not a game. It's not something you play with made up rules. If you live, you win. If you die, you lose. It's that simple. And that's basically life in general. It's like a very microcosm of what life is. And it's shown me how to appreciate very small things. Before base jumping, when I had my very first girlfriend, she and I were opposites. My favorite color is black, hers was pink. I like sharks and big dangerous things, and she liked little kittens and stuff. And it was funny because there was something I would watch her do that at the time I just found so fascinating. And what it was is, she ever saw a small animal like a kitten or a puppy or anything cute, she would lose her mind. She would literally, you could see the hair stand on end. She'd totally start shaking. She'd get on the ground and she would have an experience that I would just look at and go, I wish that did it for me. I mean, how amazing would it be to get that excited over
Keep them
something so
jumping.
simple, over something so simple? I'm all, for me to even get close to that. And I don't think I ever even get to that spot where she is. Like, I can't get to where she is, but to even get close to it, I'd have to travel halfway around the world, climb some dangerous mountain, jump off it, and almost die. And that was the only way I could even get remotely close to what she would get from just seeing a little animal. And I always was like, man, I wish that did it for me. Like, I wish I could get so much joy out of such simple things. I just wasn't wired like that. And I had to go through base jumping. And I guess, honestly, base jumping isn't even what did it. It was getting hurt base jumping. That's what did it. If I look back on my jumps, I have thousands and thousands of jumps all over the world off of some of the craziest shit imaginable. And I only remember maybe like 4 of them. Like, only 4 of them matter. All the rest of them were just whatever. They didn't really have much of an impact on me, right? I can barely even remember they happened. They all just kind of blend into each other. The ones that mattered were the ones where I got destroyed. The ones that mattered were the ones where I hit a cliff, got shattered into pieces, broke my spine, got eaten alive by animals. Rescues took 9 hours. I spent 6 months in the hospitals and in recovery, like going through rehab and learning to walk again. Those are the ones that mattered, because those are the ones that showed me how important my life really was. They were the ones that made me understand, if you can get out of bed by yourself and go to the bathroom on your own, it's a beautiful day. Any day you're not suffering in pain is a beautiful day. Any day you're not in a jail cell is a beautiful day. Like, the pain and the suffering is what taught me how beautiful life can be when you're not in pain and suffering, you know? So I think that base jumping, again, it's not an activity. It's a philosophy. It's an understanding of life and death and mortality. It's understanding what pain is and what suffering is and what fear is. And once you start really genuinely understanding those very powerful and very heavy concepts, it really helps you deal and navigate the rest of your life much better. And all I know is, for myself, if I hadn't had accidents, like if I hadn't gotten hurt and destroyed and broken down, and I didn't have to like rebuild myself and get back up and keep moving, I never would have gotten to where I am right now, right? All of those happy, fun base jumps, which there's lots of them. Yeah, I had a good time, but I have never learned anything from having a good time. I don't learn from fun. I don't learn from the joy. I mean, it's great to have. I mean, it's nice to have it. But in all honesty, I've learned from the pain. Like, that has been the most important thing in my life. And it's what made me, I mean, I am the happiest human being ever. I wake up every day with nothing but joy in my heart. Every time I get up, I go to the bathroom. I'm just like, this is the best thing ever. I love it. I mean, anytime I haven't felt depression for over 25 years, you know? And I found it through such a bizarre, like, I never even went into it intending that. Like, that wasn't what I was trying to find or trying to get to, you know? And there was no real future, because I wasn't going to live past 30. It was physically impossible. There's no way you can live doing what I do. It wasn't even a remote possibility that I could live, right? I was going to die. Like, there was just, I was full on samurai mindset of like, I go into this knowing I'm going to die. And that completely helps me shed my fear of death. And I just move forward into death. That was it. I was just constantly walking into death. And somehow I kept surviving over and over and over again. And I just couldn't believe it. But I'd go do the next thing and I'd survive again. I'm like, really? Wow, this is just unbelievable. And then I do another thing and I'm like, wow. You know, and then it kind of lived a life of just living every day quite literally like it was my last, for almost 20 plus years of just constant, nonstop, like, I go into battle expecting death and somehow don't die. And I'm just like, wow, that's pretty remarkable. You know, there was no like retirement program. I didn't save money. I didn't think of, I mean, money didn't even matter. I was like a base jumping monk. Literally, I'd make money and I just burn it. And my concept was if I died with one penny in the bank, I failed at life. Like that was a failure. Like to die with money was you didn't spend it, you didn't live it, you didn't have experience it, right? That's all. My life was just about experience. That's it. And then I had something happen to me that changed everything. It changed my whole perspective on everything. And it's when I hit Table Mountain. Like I jumped off Table Mountain. Yeah. We were filming for Real Sports on HBO. And I had what's called a terminal bounce. I hit flat, solid granite at 123 point something, like 6 miles an hour, which is terminal velocity. It's like jumping out of an airplane and hitting the ground, flat ground, with no parachute, with nothing out. And I impacted, bounced. It was shot from like 16 camera angles. The footage is absolutely unbelievable. And if you had told me before the accident, if you had said, oh, you could survive something like this, I would have been like, it's literally as impossible as it gets. You cannot survive a terminal bounce. It's impossible. You can't do it. You will 100% die. And I've actually watched friends of mine die that way. You know, I've watched them have terminal bounces and get ripped in half. So, you know, when it happened to me, I first off knew I was dead, you know, and then when I didn't die, like when I was in the hospital and the doctors informed me that I was going to survive and that I was probably going to recover and be able to walk again, I couldn't believe it. Like it was an absolute, what was really funny about the situation, because, you know, I ended up spending 6 weeks laying on my back in a South African hospital, getting multiple surgeries and skin grafts and like true pain and suffering, because I don't use pain meds. Like I don't use pain medication. So I have to go through skin grafting and feel it. Like
even in those circumstances, you didn't use any pain medication?
No, not when I had a choice. When at the accident, I was given drugs against my will. But within 3 days, I finally got enough of like strength back to finally say, I'm done. Don't give me that anymore.
Why is that decision?
You know, there's many reasons. There's a whole chapter in my book about just this very subject. I like to experience life for what it actually is, not what I would like it to be. So if I'm in pain, I want to experience my pain. I earned it. That's how I learn. I learn from pain. Without the pain, I don't learn. I don't see pain like other people. I see pain as your body is giving you a signal telling you that something is wrong and you need to listen to it. I will take medication that fixes a problem. I will not take medication that covers up a symptom.
Yeah,
I'm not into it. And that's not just, that's a philosophy that goes beyond just injuries and suffering and pain. It goes into my life in general. I don't cover things up and pretend there's something different. I want things to be what they really are. I'm very into reality, and I see that as the point of life, not just of human life, but of all living things. All living things have spent billions of years developing senses, right? Smell, taste, hearing, sight, touch. Some animals have sonar. You know, maybe we have some other senses we don't really fully understand yet, but we've developed these senses in order to experience the reality that exists outside of ourselves. And for me, I will trust billions of years of evolution to help me experience reality than some hippie mixing up crap in his bathtub or some pharmaceutical making some drug. I'm sorry. Pain is not as bad as people make it out to be. Pain is a necessary part of your life, and it will make you a stronger person. You must feel it. You must experience it. You must go through it. And anyone who takes your pain away from you, they're taking a big part of you away from you. You know, that is what makes you who you are. And it will help you in the future understand happiness and understand what it feels like to not be in pain and make you appreciate your life so much more. There's many reasons why I don't use pain medication, but the most important one is the fact that I like to experience reality for what it is, you know, and that's very important to me. And I like to I like to use it as a way of training mental toughness. I'm in a constant state of trying to train my mind to become stronger. And if you're able to like use that pain and channel that pain and feel that pain and experience that pain, which is funny because I don't like pain. I don't enjoy pain at all. Like, I'm not here cutting myself and inflicting pain on myself on purpose. But if I do something and pain happens to be the outcome of that, well, multiple things. One, I've earned it. You know, I made a mistake and I deserve punishment. And this is now the punishment that I will take my punishment. You know, I everything I do, I know what the consequences are. I go into it well aware. I'm not delusional. You know, I'm not like this person. I'm not like an optimist. I hate optimists. I think optimists are so unrealistic. I think pessimists are so unrealistic. Both of those like mindsets are wrong. If you're an optimist and everything's just going to work out, you're wrong. It's not always going to work out. Eventually, something bad's going to happen. You're going to be very disappointed when it does. If you're a pessimist and you're always thinking everything is going to go wrong, you're also wrong. It's not always going to go wrong. What you need to be is a realist. You need to be someone who's realistic about what you're doing and about what the outcomes are. You need to be able to look at the possible outcomes and accept them, you know? And if you're not willing to accept the outcomes, don't do it. That's a very simple way of deciding, no, I'm not willing to get hurt, right? If you're not willing to get broken, you're not willing to get destroyed, you're not willing to die, then don't base jump. This isn't for you. This isn't the thing you should be doing, because those are all very realistic possibilities in doing an activity like this, right? And that's life in general. You must always think, what am I doing? Am I willing to accept the consequences for my actions? And if your answer is no, or I'm going to pull the wool over other people's eyes and trick people, and you're an idiot. You're literally setting yourself up for failure in your life, right? Whereas if you go into it and you're like, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, this is the worst thing that can happen, which is almost always death, right? Death is almost always the worst thing that can happen. And if you're willing to accept it, well, then you go into it with your eyes wide open. And that to me is courage. That to me is facing, you know, when you can face reality and just really go into it and do it scared. No one ever said you shouldn't be scared. You should be scared. This better scare you. And now move forward, do it afraid. And that is literally the definition of courage. That's what being a courageous person is doing things in spite of being afraid of it. And that's my whole entire life, is doing things in spite of being afraid of it. Feeling pain and suffering in spite. I mean, these are things you go through and they make you a stronger person. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy now. I've earned my happiness. You know, I know what it means to be in pain. I know what it means to be terrified. I know what it means to suffer, you know, in all of its aspects, whether it's from depression or from being completely shattered, laying in bed, staring at a ceiling because you can't move. And you may never walk again. You're going to have to learn how to walk again. I mean, these are powerful experiences. Yeah. And without base jumping, I never would have had any of them, you know? So again, the happy, joyous, like, I'm not a sensation-seeking human being. Like, I don't do things for the adrenaline. Like, you always hear like adrenaline junkie and adrenaline rush. I hate adrenaline. I don't like the way adrenaline feels. I don't like adrenaline any more than I like being afraid, or any more than I like feeling pain. That's not why I do this stuff. That's a negative byproduct of what I do. Now, the reason I continue to, now again, we've transitioned through life, right? And now the reason why I continue doing the things that I do is because I've become very good at them. And now I like to accomplish things that other people think are impossible. I like to think of it more as like an astronaut, right? When an astronaut goes to the moon, you don't call him an adrenaline junkie. I mean, he's not doing this for adrenaline. Is he going to get adrenaline from going to the moon? Sure. There'll be adrenaline involved, but that's not why he's going to the moon. He has a different purpose. His motivation is different, right? And that's with me the same thing. I'm not going to the moon, but what I am doing is I'm doing something that other people think can't be done. I'm doing something that seems impossible. And to me, that's fascinating now. There are a lot of people who have totally functioning, totally healthy minds who take drugs on a daily basis. They smoke weed or they drink alcohol. And yes, I think those people are suffering from consciousness. Consciousness itself is causing them pain. It's causing them suffering. I mean, my coping mechanism is really more of an idea of just understanding death, like understanding what death really is. And you don't have control over these negative things that happen, outside of yourself. These things occur. But what you can have a little bit of control over is how you process it, how you look at it, how you think about it, how you remember that person. And I have a place. It's a little more challenging with my little sister. She was one of the harder ones because she was suffering from a mental disorder and she ended up hanging herself, and that's a very disturbing thing. And you do look at what could I have done differently, and a lot of your pain comes from I wish I had
Yeah.
spent more time, I wish I had been there more.
How do you get out of that? Because a lot of people get stuck right there.
Well, my process is this. Scarlett made her decision. This is what she wanted. She did what she wanted to do in her life, and you have to give these people that. Stop being so selfish. Human beings are incredibly selfish creatures, and we make everything about us. This is about me, 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 me. Well, what about her? Right? She was suffering. She didn't want to be here anymore. She made the decision that this was too much for her and she needed to be released. And you have to kind of give them that. And it's hard. It took me months, actually years, to really kind of come to terms with it because it is heavy. But for her, I just kind of have to be happy for her in the fact that she did it was a decision she made. This is what she wanted. And I have to give that to her. And that's how I deal with her decision, right? Let's say it's one of my friends. I'm jumping and one of my friends dies in front of me. I had a very traumatic experience with my friend Dwayne.
Yeah.
And we were doing a project where we were flying. He was going to fly over a bridge. I was going to fly under it. He ended up hitting the bridge and getting severed in half. And I ended up flying through his body parts and getting covered in his blood. And I ended up landing next to his severed leg on the ground. And it was it's hard to explain that to someone and them grasp the magnitude. It's at the time you go into shock and you can't really even process what's happening. And it took me 6 months to kind of even really understand, even look back. And I mean, I watched the footage, try to understand what the accident was, how it occurred, seeing it from every angle, and going through your own emotions and feelings about it. You do go through a little bit of PTSD and you don't understand your own emotions, and it's very overwhelming. But the way I cope with his death and with hundreds of others like his that I've been around and seen, is you understand that this person was going to die anyway. That's what I think a lot of people don't really get, is death is a 100% guarantee that happens to every living thing. And whether you're doing really dangerous, or just forget dangerous, whether you're living your life or not, you're still going to die. He was going to die regardless. Maybe not that day, but one day he would die 100% for sure. And at least he died. And I mean, this is a saying that people say a lot that seems almost pointless because they say it so much, but it is true. He died doing what he loved. That was him as a human being. Literally, in that moment, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do. He made a decision that had a consequence, and he paid the consequence with his life. And the consequence was his life. That's what he gave for his mistake, So he's already been punished. He doesn't need any more punishment. And it doesn't benefit him or anyone else for me to be punished for the rest of my life either. And you kind of understand that man, Dwayne, was a wonderful human being, and he was a good friend. And he was going to die anyway, even if he hadn't done that.
But
and that's where I kind
of would be different. I mean, that's what we hope for. No, we hope that he would age and do what he loves to do.
Again, that's selfish for us, right? It doesn't affect him. He's unaware that it even happened. So for him, his life had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was a powerful life with really incredible things. And I think that him specifically, he lived probably about 10 lifetimes in his 30 years, right? He did more in his 30 years than I've done in my 46. And I've done a lot of stuff. So the reality is if you're, there's all these sayings, right? The candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And if you're going to go do powerful, incredible things, there's a good chance your life isn't going to be quite as long, And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how long your life is. It matters how you live your life. And for me, whenever these really heavy things happen, I question what I'm doing. Is it worth it? Is it really worth dying for? And one thing I always come back to is, okay, I could stop base jumping right now. I could stop diving with sharks. I could stop surfing big waves. I could stop riding motorcycles. I could stop doing anything dangerous. And I'm still going to die. Nothing is going to stop that from happening. And the question is, do I want 80 years living in a padded room, staring at a ceiling doing nothing, right? Or do I want 46 years traveling the world, turning my dreams into reality, doing what I want to do? I mean, at the end of the day, there's no question. I'd rather die on my feet like a man, right? Doing what I love than on my knees, terrified of the sky. I really am kind of this person who is, it's like, there's nothing wrong with dying. There's nothing wrong with dying early. There's nothing wrong with dying, period. It actually is something that we're all going to do. So the question isn't, are you going to die? The question is, are you going to live? And what are you going to do with that little bit of life that you get, right? And this is a quote that I said a long time ago, just out of nowhere, and I've always loved it, so I keep saying it because I just think it's amazing. But my time in this world is limited, but what I can do with that time is not. That is really how you need to understand it. And people are like, oh, it was a waste. His death was a waste. It was a waste. It's like, really? Why don't you tell me a good way to die? What's the one? If you got to die any way you wanted, what would be the way? Why don't you tell me what the perfect death is, right? And what I usually hear from people is, I want to die when I'm 90 in bed in my sleep. Like, that's the number one. Like, I want to die when I'm really super old and while I'm sleeping. And I'm always like, you know what? I want you, if that's really what you think, if you think that's how you want to die, I want you to go spend a little time at an old folks home. I want you to do that. I want you to go spend some time around old people who are dying from old age. Really, really do it. Spend a week with them. Play games with them. See how their life is. And then come back to me and tell me that same bullshit again. Because I'll be honest with you, dying from old age, I watched all 4 of my grandparents die from old age. And it was not a beautiful thing. It was not a nice thing. It was not the way I would want to die. Dying from old age may be the most hardcore, gnarly way to die. And my grandpa said it straight up. He's like, getting old isn't for the weak, because my grandpa got to watch everyone he loved die. Yeah. Everyone. When I walked into his house, there were pictures on the walls, and all he would say is, I live in a house of ghosts, right? He watched his family die. He watched his wife die. He watched everyone he cared about die. When he died, he had no friends left, right? And then he died because his body collapsed upon him over years. It's the slowest, most agonizing, painful way to go. So I'm going to tell you what, you want to die from old age? That's hardcore. That is as hardcore as it gets. You don't get more hardcore than that. You just don't. If you die younger, let's just say you're base jumping and you're 48 years old or you're 30 years old or whatever age you are, and you're living your life and living your dreams and doing what you love, traveling the world exactly how you want to live it, I don't know. Is that a great way to die? Maybe, maybe not. But the reality is, to the person who's actually doing the dying, they're fine, right? They're dead. They're not worried about it.
People around them, because we think we are almost like owned by people around us, our families, our friends, or fans, etc. So what about your family? If you're dead,
here's a question for you. If let's say your mom, right? let's say she was doing something she loved, right? It gave her happiness and gave her joy and made her happy. Would you want her to do that? Or would you be selfish and be like, you know what? You can't have fun. You can't do what brings you joy because guess what? It might negatively impact me. Think about the selfishness of what that is. When, like, I had a buddy and we were at his house, and this was like back in the day when we were like really heavy into base jumping. And we were sitting there and his mom starts talking and she starts saying, "You're so selfish. What you're doing, you're not even thinking about me and how this makes me feel." And I'm like, whoa, wait 1 second. Like, what did you say? Did you just call him selfish? Are you listening to yourself right now? Who's being selfish? This is something that brings him happiness and joy, and you're the one telling him to stop doing it because of how it makes you feel. You're the one being selfish. You need to listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth because you're wrong. He's not telling you how to live your life. He's not telling you what you should or shouldn't do that brings you happiness. You're the one doing that to him. That's the selfish person, right? Now, me, I think I have a different perspective on this because I suffered from depression. And because I suffered from depression and just wanted to kill myself, I have a different perspective on this. Because my mom, she got to experience that. She got to experience me being unhappy and not wanting to be here. So when I started base jumping, my mom wasn't like, "Don't do that." My mom was like, "Good. If it brings you happiness and makes you have by all means, you do whatever you need to do to be happy with your life," right? That's a mother who isn't a selfish person.
Do you think she wishes, or does she say that ever, like that you stop base jumping?
She's gotten older and now she's in more of a place of that kind of mentality, but I don't care because at the end of the day, she gets to do what she wants to do. She does a bunch of crazy ass shit that I'm like, dude, you should probably calm down. Holy crap. But that's the reality, right? She does things that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's her life, right? She can do what she wants with it. Just like it's my life, I can do what I want. And that's what I think people need to understand. Until you find happiness in yourself and you find out how to love yourself and love your own life, you will be completely incapable of showing anybody else love or showing anybody else happiness, period. Because you're going to be constantly struggling in dark. If you're filled with darkness, all you can show is people darkness. That's it. That's all that's going to come out of you. Whereas if you're happiness and you feel happiness and the happiness is inside of you, then that's what you show people. And I really do think that, your main focus should be figuring out how to live your life. You can only live one person's life. You can't live your family's life. You have 50 people in your family. You're going to live each of their lives for them. You can't. You can only live your life. And if they're going to like put this kind of like burden on you that, oh my God, what you're doing is causing me turmoil and causing me stress. And well, that's your problem. You're going to need to learn to deal with that now, aren't you? And all of us have to learn to deal with that, period. We just do. And if I don't have a kid, but if I did have a kid, if I ever end up having children, I'm sorry, but that kid's going to be able to live his life the way he wants. I'm not going to dictate to him what he can and cannot do. I will try to guide him. If he decides I want to be a base jumper, I'll try to talk him out of it. I'm like, that's probably not a good call, dude. You sure you won't be happier doing something else?
How unbelievable that will be coming from you, Jeb.
I know, like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best call, but at the end of the day, if that's what he really wants to do, I will help. Because at the end of the day, you really do have to allow people to be themselves. And that's where I really learned, like, early in my life. I used to date girls, and I was like, oh, I would really like her if she was a little bit more like this, And then they become like that, and you're like, oh, actually, no, not really. No, you accept the person for who they are, right? You accept the person for who they are, or you don't. You don't try to make them into something else. And I think that that's where true love comes from. True love comes from accepting a human being for their flaws, what's good, what's bad. And they always say it's not about finding the perfect person. It's about accepting an imperfect person's like imperfections. That's if you love the imperfections of the human being. That's it.
What you're describing, Jeb, is so beautiful. I would name it as something like unconditional love, where we don't have a stake in that love. Like, if you do this, I love you. And if you're like this, I love you. Or if you behave that way, I won't love you kind of love.
But that's not love.
Yeah, it's something that I wish we all had from our parents, like that unconditional love. But I think just only a few of us experience it coincidentally, and we may not even notice or appreciate it fully.
Yeah, I think what you described is what my mother was. It was unconditional. It's always been unconditional. She never, at least in the first 20 years of my base jumping, she never said a negative thing, not once. She never got in my head, never tried to stop me, nothing. She just supported everything I did. And as far as she was concerned, it was the greatest thing that ever happened in the world. And I did have unconditional love. So I got to experience it from her. When I was young, she said something to me that really had an impact on just the way I lived my life. And the impact was this. She's like, Jeb, and I was young, God, 6, 7, maybe. I was like a kid. And she's like, Jeb, you have no rules. You can do anything you want. So I will love you no matter what you do. She's like, but there's only one thing. You just can't lie about it. So if you feel like you're going to have to lie to me about something, then maybe that's something you shouldn't be doing. Like, that's how you gauge if you should do it or not. If you can't be honest about something, why would you do it? If you can't tell everyone I've done this, if you can't be proud of your actions, if you can't be proud of what you're doing, then that gives you a really good indication of what you should and shouldn't be doing. It's really kind of guided me throughout my life, because if I can't,
is a measure of guidance, no?
Honesty is your measure of guidance. If you can't be honest about something, why would you do it? Like, if I can't tell you I did something, I mean, I'm totally, the only reason why there's certain things I can't talk about is because of legal reasons. But aside from that, I'm proud of everything I've ever done. I'm proud of my mistakes. I'm proud of the things that I did incorrectly, because that's how I learned. If you can't accept your own mistakes, you can never learn from them. You know, I am, if I could go back in time and change things, I wouldn't change a single thing. Nothing. There's nothing I would change in my life, because guess what? It's how I got to where I am now. I needed that pain. I needed that suffering. I needed to get hurt. I needed to get broken. I needed all of that. I needed that to be who I am now. And I like who I am now. So this idea of, if you feel like you have to lie to someone, and this happens a lot in relationships, right? You'll see someone who lies to the other one. Yeah. And you're like, well, you know what you're doing is wrong. You know it's wrong because you can't be honest. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't like themselves. A lot of people are very unhappy with themselves because they make bad decisions over and over and over again, and they know it's bad. And so now they're punishing themselves because they know they're doing bad things. They know they're being a bad person. And then that affects all of their relationships with everyone else. And it's like, dude, just be honest. What are you afraid of? You know, just be real. If someone doesn't like it, and I also love this too. I use my personality as a filter. You can filter people out of your life by just being yourself, right? And if you're just you and you're 100% honest, the people who belong in your life will stay. And the people who don't will go. Thank you for going. If you don't like me, I don't have a gun to anyone's head. I'm not forcing them to be here. If a person doesn't like me for who I am, I don't want them in my life. So why would I pretend to keep them in my life? It makes no sense. I've always found that just fascinating.
Yeah, because many of us, I think, want some kind of acceptance, you know, like we want.
You know, the only person's acceptance that matters? Yours. Your acceptance of yourself is the only one that matters. No one else matters. And now, don't get me wrong. If someone accepts you, great. It's nice to find those people. But that shouldn't be your goal, to get other people to accept you. Why would that be a goal? Really, at the end of the day, are you happy with the human being you are? Are you happy with the decisions that you make? Can you be honest with yourself and everyone else about the person you are? And if the answer to that question is yes, that's where your happiness comes from. That's where, you know, you being a complete human being and being able to wake up in the morning and just be like, this is just awesome. Life is so amazing, right? And then that's, I think, where a lot of like depression comes from too, is just trying to fit into other people's molds of what you should or shouldn't be, you know? And at the end of the day, who are they to tell you who you are? No one is. No one. Not your mom, not your dad, not anybody. Just you. You're the only one who knows, who can find that. And a lot of people are on a mission to see who it is. They don't even know yet, right? For a good 30 years of my life, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what mattered to me. I didn't know what my purpose was. But when I found it, I did it. No matter how much it scared me, no matter how much it hurt me, No matter how much I suffered, I did it. It's who I was. It's what I was. And I continued and I never stopped, and that's it. Once you find your thing, once you find what brings you happiness, once you find your purpose, you have to have the courage to live it. You have to have the courage to do it, and it can hurt badly, but sometimes you just have to go, and again, that's what your goal in life is. I think that's the purpose. You're trying to find your reason for being here and then experience the reality of what that is.
How do you think you arriving at this point of being yourself was shaped by all the difficult experiences you had as a child, like being bullied, feeling like an outsider, not fitting in anywhere? Like, did that create this courage and to stand up for yourself, in a way?
Well, maybe in a sense, I never had peer pressure. Like, peer pressure wasn't something that existed for me because I never had friends. So I didn't have anyone to really impress. I was homeschooled from 5th grade to 12th grade, right? So during that formative period, I didn't have influences of people trying to tell me what to do. And when I finally got around people my own age, I like, for instance, in high school, I had a kid like offer me some pills, and I'm just like, no, I'm good, thanks. He's like, what? You scared? Like, like that kind of stupid shit. And I'm just like, dude, I only need to tell you no once. I don't give a fuck what you think about me. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, why would you think I gave a shit what you think about me? Piece of shit. I remember it made me angry. Like, there wasn't like any there wasn't like pressure that I might actually bend to his will. It was, are you going to make me hurt you right now? Like, I will literally fuck you up. Like, you want to get in a fight? Let's do it. Like, at that stage, I was just filled with rage. So there was no one who was going to convince me of anything. So it's interesting because, yes, I think the bullying and the separation from other kids and the like loneliness, I had to become good with myself. I didn't have a choice, And it did. I think it had a huge impact on me. And it also, I think, a lot of that helped create that angst and that unhappiness and that darkness. And I think, I really love the movie Fight Club. There are some really beautiful philosophies that run through that film that I think are really important. I think a lot of people miss the concept of the movie. They thought, oh, it's a fighting movie, but it's really not. It's really much more of this idea of, only after you've lost everything are you free to do anything. Like, that kind of concept is powerful. Once you hit rock bottom, once you feel the deepest, darkest depths of your own, soul, your own self, like your own core, like you've been to the blackest part of you, only then do you understand true beauty. Like, then you have the contrast. You can see how dark and how bad and how horrible things can really be. So all of a sudden, you just need a little bit of up. And it's like, oh, this is actually quite nice, Whereas if you live here all the time, right, if you're just at this, then you just need a little dip and your whole world's collapsing on you. I've seen people who've had it just so perfect so long that just some tiny little thing happens. And oh my God, it's like this big drama. And you're like, really? That's enough to get you upset, huh? I mean, like honestly, I hate to say it, but like I just saw last night, the Oscars, Will Smith goes up and slaps Chris Rock in the face for telling a joke. And it was weird because I was just like, wow, that showed such an extreme level of weakness. Like, how weak do you have to be in order to get so upset at a joke that you go and physically assault someone? That's not a sign of strength. That's a sign of genuine weakness inside of yourself, that words can make you turn to violence. That I was really kind of like, my God, it just blew me away. Like, I was like, wow, it just was such a, and from someone who, I don't know Will Smith. I've just seen him do movies and, I've seen him do interviews and he always seemed to be kind of a switched on guy. So to witness it, I was like, wow, I never knew he was that weak. Like, I saw it as very pathetic. And it's strange to see that as someone who you actually kind of admired a little bit. You're like, wow, I would never have expected that from you. I'm sorry. If someone tells a joke, which is an obvious joke, and it makes you react that way, that's weakness. That's very weak. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was doing some research for this interview, I heard that you changed 5 schools during the first 5 years of your education.
Yes, that is true.
Oh, that's very interesting because I changed 6 schools during the first 5 years of my education.
Oh, geez. So
And
you know
I
what that's
felt
like.
like complete, like I'm with you. You know, I was an outsider. I was a newcomer. I wore like glasses and I'm quite tall. I'm like 5'10", 180. And, you know, I was 14 and already this tall, you know. So it was very difficult for me to fit in anywhere. But my strategy, like your strategy, seems to have been like, I'm gonna fight you, you know, like you can't tell me what to do, you know,
Yeah.
I'll kind of like beat you up physically,
I was
no problem.
aggressive, yeah.
Whereas my strategy has been, oh, I don't fit in here. The way I react, the way I speak, or the way I feel or don't feel about things are flagged. So let me learn the game. And I kind of learned how to signal, you know, the right way, but still go and do my own stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to be exposed to similar things, but come up with completely different coping strategies. And I think what made you this fighter, a base jumper, a wingsuit pilot, is that spirit, actually, the warrior spirit.
Yeah.
Whereas I kept it quiet, I still do whatever I want, but you know, you won't notice me doing whatever I want.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
that I'm hiding, I'm just doing it quietly, you
well,
know?
that's like my mom's new, like I in her last marriage and just you know how she is now. Her whole thing is smile, 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 do what you want. Like agree, do what you want. Like that was her whole like kind of thing, and that's very her personality, which is funny. I don't. The thing is, because I'm so honest, like I have like this. It actually my honesty's become almost too honest. Like I'm so aggressively honest that it's like almost a problem because people don't like it when you're too honest.
Yeah.
People actually like to be lied to a little bit. Like they actually like things to be softened. You know, if people have to be very careful what they ask me, right? If you were going to ask me a question, you really are going to want to have to know the answer, right? You're going to, if you don't really want to know the answer, do not ask me the question because I will be like,
Even if the question is like, how is my dress? It will still be like brutally honest.
if you're asking me my opinion on your dress, I will tell you if I don't like it. You will know instantly. I do not. And there's this thing where, you know, people are like, oh, little white lies are okay. And I'm like, no, white lies are the worst lies. And the reason why white lies are the worst lies is because if you lie about something that doesn't matter, then when something that does matter shows up, you're definitely going to lie about that. Right. So I if I see someone lying about little tiny things that really don't mean anything, I'm like, you are not someone I can ever trust in a real pinch. Because at the end of the day, if it's important and the chips are down, you're absolutely going to fucking lie about it. Like I can just, I instantly, and I have a very, I don't know. For me, lying is something that really frustrates me because I see it as just so utterly pointless, and I see it as weakness. I see it as a person being afraid. And you know, we all have to like learn how to deal with our fears. And if you're lying to someone, it's usually because you're scared. You're scared of how they're going to respond to you. And it's like just be yourself, you know? And if that person responds negatively to yourself, then that person doesn't belong in your life. It's that simple. And people are so hung up on hanging on to people. You know, and that's where you run into a lot of issues is if you're trying to control people, you're trying to own people, and you're trying to have like, no, you can't leave my life. You must like me. You're going to suffer because that person, you can't make people like you. They're either going to like you or they're not. And this is what I also realized. I don't care how good a person you are. I don't care how nice you are. I don't care how friendly you are. There's going to be people who don't like you. Straight up. It doesn't matter what you do. Mother Teresa has haters. Let's be real here. You and I are not Mother Teresa, right? We're never going to be Mother Teresa. We're never going to. And she has people who hate her guts. So that once you understand that, and it's also okay. I'm fine with people not liking me. They don't have to, right? It's okay. Like when people like, you know, anyone who's ever been online knows what it's like to be online, right? People talk shit all the time. It's a nonstop troll fest of people just saying mean stuff, always. And for me, I find it hilarious. I think it's super funny. You can't upset me. Like no troll can ever piss me off. I don't care. Now, every now and then a troll will say something that's accurate. And I'm always like, huh, good one. That's actually pretty. I gotta be honest. You actually got me there. Because you know we're all fuck up. We all have our little issues. We all do things wrong, whatever. And every now and then, but when I see something that's accurate, I'm always like, man, that's actually pretty good. That was a good one. I like that. But I don't get upset ever because it doesn't matter.
Do you try to keep some kind of balance with honesty? Like, because it can also be just harmful speech, you know?
I do not tell people things they don't ask me questions about.
Okay.
So if I will not just be mean to people, right? It's not like a little kid who walks into a room and is like, oh, you're fat. You know, it's not like that, you know. But if somebody asks me a question, right, I will be honest with that. I will not pull a punch on a question if it's asked to me. Like, but I won't like, you know, I won't walk into a church and be like, you're all wrong. You know, it's like, it's not like that. It's like the reality is, I mean, and people can believe whatever they want to believe. More power to you. If that makes you happy and it somehow gives you some kind of solace and comfort, I'm not here to try to change your mind on anything, right? But if you ask me my opinion, if you ask me what I think and why I think it, then be prepared for the answer, because I will give you an honest one, right? And with my book, be careful with what you read in my book as well, because my book is very honest, and there's certain chapters that will irritate quite a few groups of people. But it's like, guess what? You know, if you don't want to hear my thoughts, don't read my book, because these are my thoughts. This is what I think. This is who I am. This is where I come from. This is why I think the way I think. And the book was interesting because when I started writing it, I thought it was going to be a book about my adventures around the world doing stuff, right? My adventures. Turns out that's not what my book is about at all. Yes, those are there, but they're a backdrop. The book became much more about mental illness and became much more about coping, like how I coped with the mental illness that I suffered from. And not just myself, but the people around me as well. And it's a very it became much more a book on philosophy and on thought and on how I think the way I think. And I don't know, I'm very surprised at what it became. Like, I did not expect the book to be what it was. And I now feel that everyone should write a book about their lives. Everyone. I don't care who you are.
What was the process like, Jeb? Because, I mean, you're like traveling all over the world and doing this crazy stuff. And then you sit down to write this book and it takes you, I think you told me 3.5 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Three and
So
a half
what was
years,
the
but
process
it
like?
wasn't consistent. Like I broke, I would say if I were to like put it all on like together, because I was over 3.5 years and I wrote for some time and took time off and had to work and do traveling. And like you said, I travel a lot. If I were to like do it all together, 8-hour days, 5 days a week, I would say it was 9 months of 5 hours of 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. That's really what it was, 9 months, but spread out over 3.5 years. And because I was so busy and I was traveling so much, that's why it was over that kind of period of time. But you know, my process was pretty simple. I like I said, I wrote it as a diary. That's how I started, and I just tried to be as honest as I could about my memories, because you know, memories are flawed. So it's only as good as my memory is, really. And we all know that memory is not super accurate. So I tried to be as honest and as accurate as I could. And luckily I do have video to support some of it. So I'm able to watch the videos to kind of like refresh myself and, you know, but at the end, but I didn't have to do that with my philosophies, because I said a lot of it has to do with the way I see reality. Like it's reality and how I see death and like the experiences I've had with death. You know, I not only have I watched a lot of people die, I've experienced death myself multiple times. I've drowned where my heart has stopped and I've lost consciousness. I've frozen to death where my heart has stopped and I've lost consciousness. So I have experience with death, not just seeing it, but also experiencing it. So for me, those chapters were the more powerful ones, the ones where I could actually get into the philosophies and ideas and thoughts behind what death actually is, and then getting into the actual nature of what reality is and what we see reality to be and our perceptions of reality. And those are all subjects that I find very fascinating, and trying to weave all of that through an actual narrative is difficult, you know, but I found the process very illuminating and very powerful, and I learned a lot about myself in the process. And I think that if a person writes a book about themselves and they're honest in that book, they will learn a lot about who they are, things they didn't know before. Like, I know things about myself now that I didn't know before this process began. And I'm really happy that I went through the process. And I think that a lot of people, whether anyone else ever reads it, is irrelevant. It doesn't even make a difference if anyone reads this book. I got so much from the writing of it that I think that most people should go through that process.
So just hearing what you said, that you learned so much about yourself that you didn't know before, is it really possible to be brutally honest with ourselves, because we sometimes don't know our intention. Like, we have hidden agendas within us before we even speak or say anything.
That's true. I think you can only try. You know, whether you succeed is another thing, right? But I think the goal is to attempt, you know, and the more you attempt and the more you try to be honest with yourself and with other people, the better you'll get at it, you know. And if you just live that way, what's really remarkable is you don't have to have a very good memory anymore, right? Because it's just the truth. You know, you don't have to remember all the bullshit that you told people. It's like, oh, wait, I told this guy this and I told this one this. Oh, shit. And you can see it. What's really interesting is I've become a really good bullshit detector because I see contradiction very clearly. So I'm able to like watch people and see them say something and then see the contradictions within their own statements. And that's something that I've become very fascinated with, is just watching people lie and just seeing it, just being like, okay, and just no, and I don't even call them out because it doesn't even matter, right? It's like, this is what you're trying to convince me of, and that's very nice. If you can just remember what people say, you'll see the lies. You'll see the contradictions.
But even the memories we have about things that have really happened are false often.
True. You know, it's fascinating. Whenever a person has a near-death experience, their memories are not reliable. Anytime anything super extreme happens to you and you have all these memories of that experience, it's very likely that most of it's not real. Most of it is fabricated inside your own head. And I've actually witnessed it. I've seen people come back from the dead. I've seen people who are unconscious. Their heart has stopped. They've stopped breathing and they are revived. And when you talk to them, the number one thing they say as they come back is, where am I? Like, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what day it is. Most of the time, they don't even know their own name. They've had their bell rung. Like, they literally are, it's hard for them to even, like, they don't remember shit, period. And what's fascinating to me is you talk to them a month later, and all of a sudden there's these white lights and there's their grandparents and there's all this, like, and you're like, whoa, I was there, dude. You were not talking about any of that when you woke up. None of it. You know, that is just, and so what I think, and I don't think they're lying. I think that what happens is people love telling stories and they love other people to listen to them while they're telling these stories. And if you have a near-death experience, everyone wants to know what happened. Everyone. And when you tell them nothing happened, the story's over and no one wants to listen to you anymore. So all of a sudden you start remembering, oh, well, you know what? Actually, I do remember something, but I don't think they're real memories. And even if you do, let's just say someone does come back and let's just say they do have memories. Let's say they are real. Let's say they wake up and they have them from the instant they wake up. Like, they don't actually have that moment of not remembering anything, which is like 99.9% of people. But let's just say you're the 0.1% who actually do remember something. And I'm always like, well, what's more likely? That you had a dream, basically you were losing consciousness and you went into a dream state and started dreaming all these things that you thought were going to be there, right? This is how you thought death was going to go. And then you showed yourself your little movie of how you thought death was going to go in a dream, or that dead people came back to say hi to you. I mean, what seems more realistic? I mean, it doesn't seem that complicated, honestly. It seems pretty straightforward, like what it is. And like not even arguable. Like, it's pretty obvious. You know, we have dreams every night we go to sleep. We know that our brains are capable of showing us anything. You know, we can fly in our dreams. We can see our old relatives. I see my little sister all the time in my dreams, right? So, of course, if I'm having a near-death experience and my brain is shutting down, of course I'm going to be talking to my little sister, you know? That's a pretty straightforward thing that you would be doing, you know? So even if you have real memories from that moment, which both of the times I went down, I have no memories from. Zero. And not only do I not have memories from when I went down and from like that like dark period, the time doesn't exist. Like when you go to sleep and you wake up, you know time has passed. But from when I went down to the time that I came back out, it's as if that piece was just taken out and just literally stuff that happened after folded into stuff that happened before. And actually things that happened after I thought happened before and things that happened before I thought happened after. It literally folded over itself.
And what's so fascinating about what you're describing is that, so when you do all this, you said there is fear. It's not that you
Oh,
don't feel fear.
it's
There is
terrifying.
fear, but somehow you work around it. Is that so?
Um, I use fear as a way to grow. I guess that now, like back in the day, I used it as a way to deal with my mental issues, like to deal with
Mhm.
the suffering and the pain and the things I was going through. I used fear to kind of like control that. Like fear was something I could feel and so powerful that it would kind of like push all the rest of that stuff back and away. Right
Mhm.
now, I use fear as a way to just become stronger. So I see it as a way to make my mind more powerful. It's like the hardest metal is hammered the hardest, right? So the more you like take that molten and just like slam on it and hit it and just hammer the crap out of it, the stronger it gets. So that's what I do to myself. I'm in a constant state just hammering the shit out of myself so that I can become stronger.
Why so hard? Have you ever thought of that? Like because you tried softer ways and it didn't work and you realized that it's the only way? Or is it like a
No,
belief
it's
that
different
you
now. Like now, honestly, I don't need it. Like now, I'm all good. Like I'm super happy. I'm not depressed. I'm totally cool. Everything's good. Now it's just something I enjoy. Like I do like this like I like becoming stronger. Like I like becoming
yeah.
more powerful. I like becoming. I like testing my mind. I've always and that was
Expanding.
one thing I always really liked about base jumping too. Is I love the challenge of seeing how far you can go before you break. Right? How far can I go before I shatter my own mind? How much can my mind take before the fear is so much and so bad that I become crippled? Right? And that's what I've learned is I don't become crippled. Actually, the more afraid I get, the more focused I become. And there's this really interesting thing. There's like many different names for it. One is, flow state. One is the now. There are Buddhist monks who will spend 60 years of their life sitting in a temple meditating to get into the moment, right? Where they're not thinking about tomorrow, they're not thinking about the past. They're in this place, right? And what I've found with doing very high risk, very extreme things is it's almost like I don't want to call it cheating, but it kind of is because it forces you into the moment, right? When you're doing something that you know can kill you in the next couple of seconds, you are forced to be in the moment. There is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday, there's just this. And
Mm.
that's a very powerful place to be because it goes back to that concept I was talking about earlier, where that's the kind of point of life, experiencing reality for what it really is. So at that moment, when you make a decision to do something that can end your life and it's really terrifying and you're super horrified, and then you make that step, you take that transition from being on the edge to going over the edge, and now your body is like, that whole process becomes horror. And every nerve in your body, every nerve ending in your body is basically struggling and fighting against you, saying, "Don't do this. This is dangerous. Step back. Stop. Stop. Stop." And you just hear it just screaming, "Stop!" And then you go anyway. And then your body's like, "Oh, you idiot. Okay, fine. Now we have to deal with it." And then all of a sudden, it releases everything. It releases all adrenaline. It releases all endorphins. It releases everything you have to operate at your most optimum level in the next couple of moments because it knows that if you do not do the right thing in the next couple of moments, you will die, right? And that's very powerful because now all of a sudden your senses become super heightened and you become super aware of everything. Flow state, the now, time distortion. These are all names to describe this moment when all of a sudden you can feel the air touching you. You can
Yes, I know what
see
you mean.
better, smell better, taste. You're literally operating at your most optimum level,
Yeah.
period. And that is a sensation of connecting to the universe and the reality in which you live in the most powerful way imaginable. And that is the entire point of living. Like that's why we're here, is to connect to reality. I have friends die all the time. When I go on base jumping trips, I watch between 1 and 3 people die every single year. So you kind of get to a place where you see so much and you experience so much and you understand it so well, right? You've had the emotions so many times that you become very accustomed to them. It's like a doctor, right, who watches a person die on his operating table. The first time it happens, it's disturbing and upsetting. And oh my God, the 1000th time it's happened, they're like, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine is a heart surgeon, and she was saying, I was operating this guy 10 hours and he died on me. And I was like, you're just wasting my time. And I was thinking, come on,
Yeah.
somebody died. It's not about your work, but you get to that level, you know?
Well, and honestly, that person is stronger. They just are. They are capable of experiencing some of the worst the world has to offer, and they're able to conceptualize it, cope, and live, and still be a happy person. And that's a strong person. Lots of doctors are very strong people mentally and psychologically because of what they're put through.
Yeah.
Nurses, the same thing. People in war zones, the same thing. These people come out stronger, straight up. I mean, let's be real. They always talk about desensitization as though it's a bad thing, like desensitization of America. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with desensitization. It's actually a necessary process in order to cope with life in general. Like back in the day, you remember a movie called The Exorcist? It came out in like the 70s.
Yeah.
And that movie was a phenomenon. People were literally passing out in movie theaters, having to be carried out on stretchers. I mean, people were freaking out. If that movie were to drop today, people would laugh.
Yeah.
They would laugh. They'd be like, oh, God, that's terrible special effects. They could have done better on the makeup. I mean, let's get real. And what do you want? Do you want a culture that literally freaks out over a made-up movie and some makeup and some actors? Or do you want a culture who can look at that and be like, yeah, they could do better on the special effects? You know, honestly, you want groups of people who are strong, you know, and incapable of dealing with life, because life is heavy. Life is hard. You and I are going to watch people we love die. Yeah. That's a fact. The longer you live, the more you're going to experience it. I've experienced more than most because I put myself in that situation. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to learn to deal with it. And you're either going to deal with it or you're not. You know, and guess what? You don't really have a choice. You know, you don't. So you might as well start getting used to it right now. You might as well start accepting it right now. You might as well start preparing for it right now. You're going to watch your parents die. Period. It's going to happen. Get ready for it. And because you know that, you better appreciate the time you have with them now. That's what matters. I wish I'd spent more time with my little sister, because now it's too late. And that's what I think people really need to understand. Those people you love, those people you care about, those people that matter, be nice to them. Care about them. Spend time with them. Appreciate them. Because guess what? There'll be a moment when they won't be here anymore. And don't pretend like you're going to get to see them at some distant point after you die. Appreciate it right now. Because this is the moment you have to spend time with them and appreciate them. You know, and that's what I've kind of come to realize. My mom matters. You know, that's who I want to spend my time with. My fiance matters. That's who I want to spend my time with. My friends matter. You know, all this rest of this stuff is now kind of like, you know, when it comes to base jumping and all the dangerous stuff, that's become my job. It's what I do for work. And I, you know, this extreme experiences and stuff, I do them because I'm good at them. But I don't need them anymore to be a happy person. You know?
Do you see yourself ever retiring from these extreme experiences?
No. Unfortunately for me, I'm wired a certain way. So if it wasn't base jumping, it would become hippos. If it wasn't hippos, it would become tigers. There will always be something, because I'm just wired in a way where I constantly have to keep doing these kinds of things, you know? And I just don't see things like other people do. Like, I've now become like fear is so ingrained in me. Like, I'm so good at coping and dealing with it that I actually am. Things that would really terrify a normal person don't even affect me in the slightest. Yeah. Like, I don't even consider, like sharks, my heart rate doesn't even go up. Like, I'm not scared of them at all. Not in the slightest. Not even a little bit. Like it's not. I don't even consider shark diving dangerous. I don't even consider it. It's like for me, shark diving is like going and picking up milk at the market for normal people. Like it's like
After
not
how
even.
many dives are you saying this?
You'll honestly you'll your first day. Like that's the thing about sharks that are unique is this isn't because like sharks are not what people think they are. Sharks are actually really kind of cute little creatures that are actually really scared of people, and people don't realize that. And when you go diving with sharks, I've taken people on their first dive. They literally learned to scuba dive, and on their first dive, they're in the water with tiger sharks. And guess what? They are not. They don't get me wrong. They're scared on the boat. They're scared looking in the water. Mm-hmm. They're scared jumping in the water. But once they go down and they're with the sharks, you can actually see the look on their face do this, like, oh, okay. I mean, this is actually, not.
That was my experience when I was diving in the Keys. The instructor tapped on my shoulder and said, "Shark, 2:00." And my reaction was like literally to turn around to swim after the shark. Yeah. Because I was like, when else am I going to see a shark? Oh my God, there's a shark here. And then he grabbed me by the ankle. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, just curious, because I know nothing about sharks. Okay, I heard they can be dangerous and stuff, but there was this childish curiosity that was triggered first. And we banned that. We blocked that almost, which is sad.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, if you decide to go diving with sharks, like you go on specific shark dives anywhere in the world, there's zillions of them now. They're everywhere. And you get in the water with the sharks, I can guarantee you will not be scared in the water with the sharks. They are not scary.
The shark was scared of me. Like it made you think, what's wrong with this human? Just leave me alone.
But that's what's funny about it. It's impossible to be scared of something that's scared of you. And the sharks are terrified of you. And that's once you start seeing the body language of the shark and you start seeing how scared the shark is and how the shark doesn't want anything to do with you. No. It's just trying to get to the fish. Like it just wants to get to the blood in the fish. And it's like, how can I get to the blood without going anywhere near that crazy looking thing? Like they're just so scared of you that it's a bizarre feeling to be in the water with these dinosaurs, like these creatures that literally watch dinosaurs come and go. Yeah. And you're in there with them and they're just like super scared of you. It's a very, sharks for me are not an extreme experience. They're much more of this really wonderful connection with nature in its very pure form, which you can't really do with most predators. Like you wouldn't screw around with a tiger like this or a lion. Like you wouldn't just drop into the savannah and go run up to a lion. You'll get killed. It will eat you. It'll rip you apart. What I think the reason why that is because, we evolved alongside lions, right? They know us. They've known us for hundreds of thousands of years and we're food. Like as far as they're concerned, if you're out there roaming around and you don't have a gun, you're food. That's it. They're going to eat you, right? Yeah. Whereas sharks are not used to us. We're not ocean-going creatures. They've been in the ocean for, like 300, 400 million years. They've been around longer than trees. They've been around longer than Everest. They've been around for so long. They're ancient, like these ancient minds, and they are not used to us. They're not used to what we are. And when we come in the water, we're alien. And because we're alien, they're scared. They're like, that's a scary thing. And beyond that, I think that sharks are smarter than we give them credit for. Mm-hmm. I think sharks can tell we're dangerous. I don't know how they know we're dangerous, but they know we're dangerous. And the only reason I can say that is because I've been diving with them for 30 years now. And every time I get around sharks, they are terrified of me. Why are they terrified of me? Why should that shark that's 2,000 pounds with razor blades for teeth that can eat like monster animals, why is it scared of me? Like, how is that even possible? Unless it knows something. How can it know how dangerous I really am? Because I am.
But do you take it personal sometimes? Maybe they're scared of you personally?
No, they're scared of everyone. They're scared of everyone. And this is what's fascinating. Do sharks attack people? Yes, it happens. It's so rare. Like, that's what boggles my mind. What doesn't boggle my mind is that people get attacked by sharks. What boggles my mind is that so few people get attacked by sharks. Like, why is it that so few people get attacked by sharks? You would expect it to be happening every day, all around the world, all the time, that we would be a main food supply. We're slow, we're pathetic, we're in the water, we can barely move. You'd think we were easy meals for sharks. But for some reason, the sharks don't want anything to do with us. And every now and then someone will get bit, but it's so rare that if you were to look at like on a list of things that kill human beings, sharks are at the bottom underneath coconuts. Vending machines kill more people than friggin' sharks do. The water the sharks live in, okay, the ocean itself drowns more people than do from the sharks that live in that water. I mean, literally, like in one day, more people drowned in the ocean than do from shark attacks year round. So if you're not scared of the water the sharks live in, then you shouldn't be scared of the sharks that live in it. Like, it's literally, bees are more likely to kill you, ants, spiders, snakes, cows, horses, I mean, dogs. I mean, everything kills more people than sharks. It's crazy. And how people are so terrified of them boggles my mind. I mean, like I said, I've been diving with sharks longer than base jumping. Over 30 years, I've been diving with sharks. No cages, blood, in their most agitated, pissed off state. Like, we pour blood in, piss the sharks off so we can get pictures of them, right? And I've never seen a person get bit. I've never seen a person get killed. I've never seen a person get hurt. I've never seen anything. I mean, over 1,000 dives. I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in the water with every species of shark known to man. No one's been hurt. Not with me. Now, I know other people have, but not one person, not around me ever.
We interact with them less than we interact with any other animal, you said, no?
I'm talking about me actually being in the water interacting with them, right? I've spent hundreds of hours in the water with bull sharks, tiger sharks, great whites. And I think people don't realize how much they interact with sharks. Sharks are in every ocean, everywhere in the world. There are literally millions and millions of people getting into water every single day around sharks every single day. And they don't even notice the sharks are there. They don't even know they're there, but they are. I mean, you'll see footage from above of people swimming around, throwing balls, and the sharks just swimming around them, you know? And that's what's fascinating about it. That's what usually people say, well, there's a lot more people around horses than sharks, and that's why horses are killing more people. And you're like, well, that's why I always use the water reference, right? Because you're literally using an apples to apples comparison are people getting in the ocean, right, where the sharks live, being killed by the water that the sharks live in than from the sharks in that water. Right, that's an apples to apples comparison, and it's astronomically more people drown in the water itself than do from the sharks that live in the water. Straight up, you know.
Wired this way, our brains are wired to find that one odd death, you know, like.
Well, I think that people don't like. We have separated ourselves from nature, right? Mm-hmm. We do not like the idea of being on the food chain. We do not like the idea of being eaten by another creature. Like, that's not cool to us. Like, we do not like that idea, even though that's nature, and everything in the world that dies usually gets eaten by something else. Unless you're a human being, right, which we've separated ourselves from nature, but we don't get eaten by stuff anymore, right? And we burn our bodies.
We get eaten by insects and mushrooms, whatever.
If we don't burn ourselves, right? But most people get cremated, so they're not even getting eaten by anything. So they're literally separating themselves from nature, like completely. They're not even part of the cycle anymore, right? So you just kind of sit back and go, we do not like the concept of being eaten. That's why we bury our dead. That's why mummification came into existence. We really don't like the idea of getting eaten, even when we're dead, right? We don't like it. We just don't like it. We really don't like it. And sharks are one of the last creatures left that can still eat us. You know, they can still eat us, and they do. Every now and then, a shark will eat somebody. And when they do, it makes the news around the world. So someone gets eaten by a shark in Australia, right? And that's worldwide news. Yeah. 10 people got killed by bees that same day in that same area that the shark ate somebody. But no one gives a shit. No one cares. They died from bee stings. Oh, well, no one cares. They got in a car accident driving to the beach and died. No one cares. Yeah, you know, that's the funny thing, right? Yeah. They love the monster story. They love the story of the monster eating the person. Oh, my God. You know, but that's sad because that turns sharks into monsters, and then we go out and we try to wipe them off the face of the planet because that's what human beings do. When something hurts us or kills us, we destroy it. And that's what we've been doing with sharks for, you know, a long time. You know, we are extinction machines, and we are driving sharks to extinction. because we're scared of them. And it's sad. It's just a sad thing because I love sharks. They're very sweet little animals that have a purpose. They're in the oceans to clean our oceans. That's what they do, and we'll have very sick oceans without them. Very sick oceans.
And do you do any works around that?
Little
Like
bits. I mean, I
charitable
do what I can. I do what I can. It's such a huge problem, and it's a problem that's global. Like it's mostly like a lot of Asia loves shark fin soup, and they kill hundreds of millions of sharks a year to make soup out of them.
So bad.
And it's an incredibly challenging issue that's hard. And the best thing I can do, and from what I've seen, is the more footage you see of people interacting with sharks, where the sharks aren't eating people, the better. The more you see a human being filming a shark and petting a shark and like being with sharks, you just see the sharks interacting. I think that's a really it's a big step in educating people that they're not monsters just eating people all the time. So that's what I try to do. That's the best I can do, really. I'm one person, I try, and it's if I can show people footage of a shark interacting with a human being in a positive way, where the shark isn't looked at as a monster, that's the best I can do, really,
Yeah.
And I try, and I don't eat shark products. Like I refuse to eat anything that involves a shark. And if there's a restaurant that's serving shark fin soup, I get up and walk out. Like I won't even eat at a restaurant that has shark fin soup in it because I that's how strongly I feel about it. But aside from that, what am I supposed to do? What can you do?
Yeah. Jeb, I feel like we started to talk when it was breakfast time for you, and it's probably lunchtime for you. It's been 2.5 hours, and I covered like half of my questions. There are so many topics to cover. We talked about like impermanence, we talked about death, we talked about like being yourself and not having this influence, from others, or not accepting the script written for, by the society for us. We talked about suicide, mental health issues, but there are topics I really wanted to talk about, like, dealing with fear or freedom, because I know it had a huge impact on you, like the way you feel about base jumping and the way how it changed you. So,
well, it's been an incredible conversation. I love talking. And you're a wonderful person to talk to. Thank you for, having a conversation with me. It was fun. And you have quite an exciting life too, doing quite exciting things. So that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. I try. I'm like nothing compared to you, but I like the philosophy of pushing my borders, and facing fear has been a big, big element in my life too. When I was 9 years old, I was scared of being alone in the dark. And my mother said, "Oh, when you're 13, you won't be afraid. You'll be big enough." And I thought, 13? Are you crazy? That's like ages ahead. Like, how am I going to get there? And then I remember when I was 13, I was still scared. So what I would do, I would turn all the lights off when I was alone at home, and then just sit in the hallway or something, like in the middle of the living room or somewhere very exposed, just to feel how fear was shaping me or what fear was doing to me. And it was a very physical process. Like I would sweat, I would cringe, there would be something in my stomach, and I would think, wow, this is all my mind creating all this. And since then, everything that scared me, I took baby steps compared to you. No,
it's not compared to me. It's strong for you, and that's the thing, is that there is no baby step. Fear is fear. If you're feeling it and you're confronting it, it's the same as the fear I feel and that I confront. There's no difference. That's the same stuff.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for having found somebody else who has this philosophy and who's like gone all the way to the extreme, over the edge with base jumping, actually, not to the edge, but over the edge. And like who also radiates this philosophy and like shows us something there for us to discover. Like fear is just another emotion. We don't just have to experience like happiness and joy and then die. I feel like we signed a contract before we came here that said you're going to be born as a human and you're going to be exposed to all human emotions, no exceptions. And fear is one of them, and depression is one of them, and sadness and grieving is like, they're all a part of the experience. Yet we try to ban, like, oh, this is a bad emotion, I want to avoid that. Oh, this is a great emotion, I want to have that. And that creates the problem, like desire and avoidance. We don't just keep turning the wheel to avoid things or to get things, and then we lose touch with reality that you're so dedicated to experience. So I have a lot
Well,
of
and
respect for that. Thank you.
I also think you can't have one of the emotions without the other. Because if you just, let's just say your favorite food is a Twinkie, right? Let's just say that's your favorite. And if you just ate Twinkies all day, every day for the rest of your life, it wouldn't be your favorite food anymore, right? It would
No.
become an unpleasant thing to eat. And that's the thing. You have to have these polar opposite sensations for you to even understand what joy is. Like until you know what pain and suffering is, you don't truly understand what joy and happiness is. If you just lived in joy and happiness from birth till death, joy and happiness wouldn't have any foundation for you anymore. It
No.
wouldn't mean anything. That's just how things are supposed to be. And that's
Yeah.
what's really fascinating, is that until a person has experienced true suffering, they can't know what it means to experience true joy. And that's just the truth. That's just reality of what I've experienced. So I agree with you 100%.
So, okay, final question. Looking back to your kind of teenage years now, how is that fire doing in you? The fire you described that you had to kind of keep aside, keep away a little to have some distance.
It's funny. I would say it's out. Like I don't even notice it anymore. Like I it's hard to say. I'm in a very good place, and I've been in a very good place for over a decade. I haven't felt depression in a very long time. I've had a few moments, and I actually write about them in my book. It's too complicated. We'd be here for another 4 hours, but there's a few moments where I had some like where that fire, I could see that it's still smoldering in there. I know it's still there, but I don't see it now. Like I don't just experience it now. I have to have certain things occur to start seeing that it's still kind of there. But in general, I would say 99.9% of the time, I'm very just like content. I'm very content. I'm very happy. Life is very, I don't know. I don't know how to say it. It's just, it seems almost trite to just say that I'm happy all the time, but I really am. And I think that I understand happiness because I understand sorrow, and I know what that is and I know what that means. And I just don't allow myself to go there. But I'm going to leave you with one little story about this idea of shifting perspective and shifting thought. And it's going to sound evil and wrong, but it actually worked out quite nice. And my grandma died, which was my mother's mom. So my mother's mom died. And my cousins called me and told me, grandma died. And I was like, that's great news. Good for her. Like I was so happy for her because, she was old and she was suffering from dementia and she was in a home and, it was time. I mean, I'm not a selfish person. I thought as like the best news ever. Good for her, right? That's a perspective thing, right? That's a way of looking at it. So I took it as a great news and I was like, oh, that's great news. And they were like, what? Like, instantly, like, you're a crazy person. I'm just like, no, that's good. I mean, come on. Anyways, they're like, please tell, Aunt Gigi, which is my mom. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll tell her. But it kind of slipped my mind. And it like about 3 days went by and I kind of forgot about it, which is just shows the kind of person that I am. And one day I'm on the phone with my mom and I'm like talking to her. And all of a sudden I remembered, I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, grandma died, right? And I said it like that. And my mom's like, wait, what did you say to me? I'm like, yeah, grandma died. Like it was like good news. Like it wasn't bad news. And my mom started crying instantly. And I'm just like, Mom, what are you crying about? And she's like, Jeb, it's my mom. And I'm like, stop being so selfish. This isn't about you. Don't make this about you. Grandma was old. She was living in a home. She was suffering from dementia. What do you want from this woman? You gotta let her go. This is about her, not you. And instantly my mom snapped out of it. She stopped crying. And she's like, you know what, Jeb? You're right. You're right. She was old. It was her time. She was suffering. This isn't about me, And I think that right there shows you a way of thinking. You can see things as negative and depressing and sad. And I watched my mom. She was starting to go into a downward spiral that was not going to be positive. And I instantly just gave her, like, a lot of people would see what I did as cruel or mean or heartless, but it's not. It's perspective. It's seeing things in the right way, which can help you deal with emotions and deal with thoughts that are negative. And my mom, she needed to be brought out of a downward spiral that was not a positive thing. And it worked. She saw it for what it was. She understood the positive nature of what it was, and it was correct. She was old. It was her time. She was suffering. What do you want? Her to be here and suffer forever? I don't see death as a negative thing. When I saw her die, it really was a genuine sense of happiness for her. And that's a person who isn't religious.
Mm-hmm. And you can only offer a perspective. You could not force it onto your mother. Like, she had to choose her perspective in the end.
Exactly. But again, the thought process makes a big difference. How you see things, how you process things, what you choose to focus on, right? And a big part of this is try not to be so selfish. Try not to make everything about you. Remember that there are other people in your life. There are other things going on exterior from you that you do have an impact on. So if you can start thinking about the positive things, because guess what? If you can walk around, if you are not in pain, if you are not in prison, your life is going well. It really is. So just remember that, and then if you can start seeing the good in your life, because there's a lot of very depressed people who are very healthy human beings.
Mm-hmm.
They're strong physically,
Mm-hmm.
and they just need to work on becoming strong mentally. And you can do it. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize, is how capable they are. They can do anything. The only limits are the limits they place upon themselves. And
Yeah.
once they come to that understanding, my God, they're unstoppable. Even me in my depressed state, this idea of I'm not going to waste my death by committing suicide. I'm going to use my death to do something extraordinary. Just that thought process opened the door for me. It's just a way of thinking. Nothing had changed. Whatever was making me sad and depressed and unhappy didn't go away.
Yeah.
But I had shifted my perspective. I had shifted the use of my death for something bigger than myself. And that gave me a direction and something to do. And that's what you can do. Even in the darkest, most horrible moments of your life, you can look at it and go, okay, this sucks. What do I need to do to change it? How can I make this situation better? And that's what you need to focus on. And I know it's easy to say. I know it's easier to say than it is to do. But at the end of the day, you don't have another choice, right? You got to do something.
Yeah.
To make it something important, that's all I got.
You have really mastered the concepts of impermanence and fear, my friend. Thank you so much for your open heart and sharing all this with us, unfiltered, with brutal honesty. It's not going to be an easy episode for everyone to listen to.
Well, thank you. I hope if you ever get a chance to read my book, you like it.
Please share us the name of your book, and again, when it will be out.
Oh yeah, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna come out on the 28th of April, and it's just called Memoirs from the Edge by Jeb Corliss.